Well, our next guest has been traveling across the country to several swing states, speaking with women about getting out the vote. Rachel Vindman joins us now. She's the co-host of the podcast entitled The Suburban Women Problem. And Rachel, I love the title of the podcast. I want to hear about the problem. You have a new op-ed for USA Today entitled Complacency Got Women Here, but Authenticity Can Get Us Back to Where We Want to Be. And you write in part, in the course of 3 weeks, I took 3 flights and drove over 1,300 miles to talk to women in 4 states. It was about women, our experiences, and how policies and proposals playing out across the country are affecting us and our families. I heard so many women introduce themselves and say some version of, I've never been politically active, but I know I have to do something now. For too long, we heard people casually repeat disinformation and lies, but many of us were too polite to push back because we were afraid to engage with someone out of fear they were better informed than us, or simply we wanted to keep our social interactions free of politics. The only way out of this mess is for those of us who have been complacent, and I'm talking to myself here just as much as anyone else, to roll up our sleeves and work alongside anyone who is willing to work with us. Complacency got us here, but authenticity can get us back to where we want to be. So, Rachel, I love it. I agree. I also think after Donald Trump was voted into office, a lot of women said, you know what, hell with it, I'm going to run for office. I mean, I obviously I can't leave this to other people.
Yes.
But in other ways, we've still slid back even more with abortion rights being taken away, rights we've had for 50 years. So how do we push back against that complacency that you write about?
I think the best way is to tell women to talk to other women, to talk to their friends, to talk to their family. We've got to get out of these information silos. And the best way to do that is through relational organizing, which is kind of becoming a buzzword, but we shouldn't let it becoming a buzzword take away from its efficacy, because we are seeing women very easily. You know, I said in the op-ed, I mean, instead of going out and knocking on doors of strangers, which is still a great thing to do, but this talking to people with whom you already have a relationship, that you already have rapport, they trust you, and you can talk about these tough subjects. And that's the thing, we have to talk about it. For too long, we haven't talked about it, and now we have to get in there and discuss these things and help people vote. Some people are very embarrassed that maybe they've never voted, and we just have to put that aside and help them vote and make sure their voice is heard.
So the discussion, Rachel, is so important. I mean, for example, on the issue of abortion, for years, I think a lot of women sort of didn't want to talk. If it had different points of view, fine, but it was there. It was a right.
Absolutely.
And for those who needed that health care, it was there. It was a right. I feel like the conversations you're talking about women needing to have, it's especially young women who may think an abortion is somewhere off and maybe not their future. Actually, whether it's you or someone you love, this is a matter of life and death. This could be a problematic pregnancy, and you are sitting there on the table, and your doctor is trying to figure out how not to break the law. It could have nothing to do with the concept of abortion, as Republicans might put it. It's about our lives, our health care. And sometimes I want to take young women by the collars and say, this is about you. You have got to, if this is the one time you vote, the first time you vote in your life, please let it be these midterms. Do you feel the urgency, especially among younger women and men?
I do feel the urgency.
On this issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely do. It's there. I met a lot of young women who came to the events when I was traveling around, and I met a lot of women, older women, but younger than me, who say, I work with a lot of young women and I want to talk to them about this. And the best way, I think, is to share a personal experience. I had an ectopic pregnancy. We lived in Germany, and I went for just a regular checkup. I thought I was having a miscarriage. I was in surgery within 30 minutes. That's how emergent it was. And I have shared that story a lot. Prior to that, to this moment, I haven't really shared that story very much, but I want people to know I didn't have time to drive 4 or 6 hours to a state that would have allowed me to have the surgery that I needed to save my life. And these are the stories we have to tell. We have to amplify these stories. And, look, I know the polling, people are talking about tightening polling. I don't have time to mess with that. I mean, as we get closer to the election, we really like to talk about horse race politics, and it's fun and it makes for great discussions, but we just need to get in there and do the work and put that aside for a minute. And when I say we, I mean suburban women. Like you can't look at that and have it make a difference, because it's going to be close, but everyone needs their voice to be heard. And that's why, these women, I'm just so excited. I'm inspired and encouraged by their desire to make a difference, even if they never have before. And that's what I think is actually being missed in this polling, is people who are not considered likely voters, but are likely voters.
So what are the uncomfortable conversations? I mean, I think you're right. I think women sometimes don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. They want to keep their social interactions positive. And even worse, we don't want to make people feel for some reason, we feel responsible for the comfort of everybody in the room. And in Know Your Value, I often tell women, stop doing that. It's about what you have to say. And sometimes it needs to be uncomfortable. But it's hard. What are some of the issues where it's worth having the uncomfortable conversation? Because, Rachel, there are some that are not worth having, because there's no changing. People who have been poisoned by disinformation, they're not changing. So that, I would say, I'm not having that, because I don't really know how to change someone who's completely poisoned by being a member of a cult that they don't even know they're in. I mean, it's really sad. That's a sad situation. But people who you can have conversations with, what are the uncomfortable conversations? What are the issues you think should be pressed?
Well, first, I completely agree with you. You got to know when to walk away and know when to run. Just, keep that Kenny Rogers song in your head. And then the other thing I would say when you're talking to people, look, a lot of people are the victims of casual disinformation, and they're repeating it. And you got to push back. And I say this as a really good friend of mine, my neighbor, my carpool partner. A lot of times I have to, kind of correct some things that she's heard, but we're able to have great conversations. And even if we look at things a little different, and I think that I have shown her and pointed her to resources that have dispelled some of the nonsense that she has seen on social media. And that's really important. She doesn't watch the news. She doesn't consume the news. And that is really the place that we can make the biggest difference. And then the other part is just helping people register and get to the polls. Maybe you need to watch their kids while they go vote. Encourage early voting. A lot of people don't know the possibilities of early voting. My husband and I voted in Virginia in 4 minutes. So in and out of the car in 4 minutes. Early voting is amazing. Wow. But you got to talk about these things so that people know it's available.
Rachel Vindman, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate your coming on the show this morning. Great conversation. And on a